This video is basically going to detail probably the one of the most important aspects of the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, pre-intelligence, involving the NSA and CIA. And at this point, I probably sound like a broken record, but this is one of the most important and often forgotten, ignored aspects of this terrorist event, and it is highly important because it shows that two agencies have had prior knowledge of al-Qaeda affiliates and members that were going to a highly covert meeting in Malaysia in which two of those people had dual US visas and were coming to the United States, and a decision was made from the Director of Central Intelligence to withhold that information from the FBI and State Department. The question is why? But a little bit of a backstory. December 29th, 1999, the NSA is listening in on a phone call between al-Qaeda figure Walid Bin Attash. His name is Walid Bin Attash, and Khalid al-Mihdhar, who is staying at a house in Sana'a, Yemen. Attash mentions Khalid al-Mihdhar's full name, as well as the first names of Nawaf al-Hazmi and Salem al-Hazmi. The NSA is the only agency in the world to know the full names of Khalid al-Mihdhar, Nawaf al-Hazmi, and Salem al-Hazmi. They never share this information with anybody else. Walid Bin Attash says he wants the three men to come to an important al-Qaeda summit in Malaysia in January of 2000. Now, the NSA had already heard the names of the three future 9/11 hijackers repeatedly in the year 1999 while monitoring the phone of this house in Yemen. But apparently, U.S. intelligence does not know Walid Bin Attash's full name or his role in al-Qaeda, and doesn't figure that out until late of 2000. Because the NSA doesn't share this information immediately. At the same time, U.S. officials in Pakistan intercept Nawaf al-Hazmi in Karachi, calling Khalid al-Mihdhar at the Yemen hub. They learned that Nawaf al-Hazmi is planning a trip to Malaysia on January 4th, 2000. The NSA is also monitoring Nawaf al-Hazmi calling his brother Salem, although the location of Salem al-Hazmi at this time was not revealed. Only the NSA knows that. However, the NSA does share details of these calls with the CIA and other agencies on December 29th, that evening, because the NSA does not do human intelligence. And what they wanted was pictures to the faces that they're listening to, hoping that the CIA would share that information. Because the CIA does human intelligence. Now, al-Qaeda leader or high-profile member, Walid Bin Attash, he cases 4 flights to acquire basic information about how a hijacking might be conducted. He does this between the dates of December 31st, 1999 and January 2nd of 2000. Now, he starts from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and he flies to Bangkok and then on to Hong Kong before returning to Malaysia via Bangkok. Now, take this with a grain of salt, because he'll tell a CIA interrogator when he's renditioned that he took a box cutter onto the plane, but that security did not notice it. Now, while in Malaysia, he and operative Abu Bara al-Tazizi initially stay with Ridwan Isamuddin, whose Nam de Gora is called Hambali, one of the leaders of Jemaah Islamiyah, at an endo-like clinic where Walid Bin Attash receives a new prosthesis leg on his left leg. And presumably, he shares what he learned at the al-Qaeda summit meeting in Malaysia with this. Now, between the dates of January and March of 2000, it is confirmed that there are 50 to 60 CIA officers from the counterterrorism unit and the Bin Laden Issue Station, codename Alec Station, that read cables reporting on the travels by Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, and that the cables are generated in connection with the al-Qaeda summit meeting, which al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi attended, in which the Malaysian authorities took pictures and the CIA monitors. Even though some of the cables state that Khalid al-Mihdhar has a U.S. visa and Nawaf al-Hazmi has arrived in the U.S., they never tell the FBI. They never tell the State Department. And when Doug Miller, an FBI agent on liaison to the Bin Laden Issue Station, like Mark Rossini as well, and Margaret Gillespie, when Doug Miller reads that cable, he tries to draft a cable warning the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. about 2 al-Qaeda subjects coming inside the United States, men who were involved at some level with the USS Cole bombing and the 1998 East Africa bombers. However, he has to get authorization from the CIA to share CIA information with the FBI, and he's refused. His cable does not send. So when Mark Rossini talks with a CIA case officer detailed to the Yemen hub, Michelle Ann Casey, she tells him it's not an FBI matter because we think the next attack is in Malaysia. Now, the reason why she says this, she doesn't know this. She's implied that the next attack's in Malaysia because there is no definitive evidence that they had an attack on U.S. stations in Malaysia. They just had the meeting there. But because it's outside the jurisdiction of the FBI can't share any information with headquarters. Information, I'm talking about CIR cables, that are shared with the Bin Laden Issue Station and the counterterrorism unit in the CIA. And that information is not shared with anybody, except if they get permission. The cables are drafted at 4 field offices and at headquarters and are read by overseas officers, headquarters personnel, operation officers, analysts. So there was a lot of people at the CIA who knew about these 2 men that were coming inside the United States. Now, the CIA's Inspector General will later comment, and I'll take a quote, which is from the Central Intelligence Agency dated June of 2005. Quote, over an 18-month period, some of these officers had opportunities to review the information on multiple occasions when they might have recognized its significance and shared it appropriately with other components and agencies, and they did not. Now, that's coming from the Office of the Inspector General Report on CIA Accountability with respect to the 9/11 attacks. And I'm going to share that in the description. Again, the CIA and the NSA now know that there are 2 al-Qaeda affiliates coming inside the United States without telling it to the FBI and the State Department. Now, I'm not done here. Months later, the CIA, continuing to monitor what the FBI knows, goes and has a meeting with FBI officials in Washington, D.C., the counterterrorism center of the FBI. Now, a CIA liaison officer from the counterterrorism unit goes and meets with an FBI agent from the counterterrorism unit. Now, I'm going to be playing a clip about Joint House inquiry, and we're going to dissect it. What I'm going to do is basically share the screen so you could see for yourself. And will go over what Carl Levin is telling a man behind a partition. That man is Tom Wilshire, who is the deputy chief, the number 2 at the Bin Laden Issue Station. Let's see what he has to say.
Then in March of 2000, the CIA found out that al-Hazmi had entered the United States at Los Angeles International Airport on January 15th, not shared with the FBI, even though they knew he entered the United States, not shared with the watch list. Then another event occurs in October of 2000. This is a watershed event. This is the coal being blown up. And by January of 2001, the CIA knows that the coal planner was at that January 2000 meeting in Malaysia. They knew that a man named Khallad had been the center of that attack and the planner, and that Khallad was at the January 2000 Malaysia meeting with the 2 people we're talking about, al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi. CIA still did not place either individual on the watch list, still no notice of known visas, and I emphasize that, known visas to the FBI. They may or may not have shared with the FBI earlier that one of them had a passport, but in terms of visas and visas to enter the United States, and the fact that one at least had entered the United States, still, CIA doesn't place names on watch lists, still no notice to the FBI. And now we have a direct link to the killer, or the killers of Americans on the USS Cole. Direct link between these 2 men, al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi, to the planner, Khalid, of the al-Qaeda attack on the USS Cole. Now I want to...
Okay. So right here, coming from the CIA's own information, this is not made up by anybody else. It's not made by this is not information that's manufactured by a competing agency. This is from the CIA's own information about what they collected regarding their investigation into the Yemen hub, into Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. This is outside of the NSA, because God knows what they have in their possession and what they heard on those phone calls, all right? The CIA had made a decision not to tell the FBI about these 2 individuals, not to tell the Department of State about these 2 individuals coming inside the United States, so they could warn Immigration and Naturalization Services to conduct a proper, thorough investigation of these 2 men, separate of the FBI. So there would have been a lot of eyes on these 2 guys as soon as they entered the United States, as soon as they got off the plane. But there was a coordinated decision from the top of the CIA not to share this information, or to even put them on the watch list or the tip-off database. Why? Why? Why didn't Cofer Black of the Counter-Terrorism Center basically warn the Department of State about these 2 men? Why didn't the Director of Central Intelligence, George Tenet, basically warn the FBI or the State Department? Why didn't Tom Wilshire, the Deputy Chief of Alec Station, Bin Laden Issue Station, warn the FBI or the State Department? I just named 3 high-level officials who read these cables and who made a coordinated decision not to share that information with the FBI. Why is it the 9/11 Truth Movement talking about this? Here I am, I'm mentioning names. There was a coordinated effort to intentionally withhold information about these 2 men. I've done countless videos on this. And I think this is so important because no one ever talks about it. No one. Maybe 3 people, 4. Tops. This is amazing information. Why is this ignored? Okay, like I said, it doesn't end here, because months later, many months later, the CIA is phishing the FBI about what they know about Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, because they're already inside the United States. They're getting funding and by Saudi government officials like Omar al-Bayoumi. Osama Basnan. And one such account that they're getting money from is from former U.S. ambassador to the United States, Saudi ambassador, Bandar bin Sultan. So let's go back to Carl Levin, because what does the CIA do months later?
Proceed now to the June 11th, 2001 meeting, because that's what I really want to focus on, and then the events after that. But that's a bit of the background, and if I'm wrong in any of that, I would assume that our witnesses would correct me. On page 9 at the bottom of Ms. Hill's report, it stated the following. On June 11th, 2001, FBI headquarters representatives and CIA representatives met with the New York FBI agents handling the Cole investigation. The New York agents were shown but not given copies of the photographs that they and told that they were taken in Malaysia. They weren't told that. Still, information being withheld. This is after the Cole. Information withheld from the FBI. One of the New York agents recalled that al-Mihdhar's name was being mentioned. He also recalled asking for more information on why the people in the photographs were being followed. So we got an FBI now asking the CIA, why are you following these folks? He recalled asking for more information on why they were being followed and for access to that information. The New York agents were advised they could not be told why al-Mihdhar and the others were being followed. This is truly unbelievable. I've got to tell you, you all, this is extraordinary. This has got nothing to do with information which can't cross a wall. This has to do with leads which are not shared with the FBI. Just simple leads. Information which is so critical. Now, an FBI headquarters representative told us in her interview that the FBI was never given specific information until it was provided after September 11th, 2001. And here's where I want to pick up with our witnesses. The CIA analyst who attended the New York meeting acknowledged to the Joint Inquiry staff that he had seen the information regarding al-Mihdhar's U.S. visa and al-Hazmi's travel to the U.S., but he stated that he would not share information outside of the CIA unless he had authority to do so and unless that was the purpose of the meeting.
Does that sound familiar? I brought this up recently, okay? The CIA analyst who goes to this meeting is Clark Shannon. He goes and meets with the FBI analyst, two of them, one of them being Steve Bongard and the other Dina Corsi. At this meeting, he shows them photographs that were taken by the Malaysian authorities at the summit meeting that the CIA knew about. Shows them pictures of Khalid al-Mihdhar, Nawaf al-Hazmi. He shows them these pictures. Now, previously, an FBI agent went before him and showed them the pictures of her own colleagues, and she was told not to share their names with them, and she just basically said, do you know any of these people? And they told her, no. Margaret Gillespie was the agent. She works out of the FBI. So the CIA sent her to Steve Bongard at first and showed him these pictures. This was months prior. And they basically said they had no idea. And they tell her, who are they? Now, she doesn't know the names. Okay, they didn't tell her the names. They just sent to her and said, could you go to the FBI in Washington and see if they know who these people are? Now, she doesn't know, but they're already suspicious of her because she's detailed to the CIA's Alec Station. So they think that she knows, even though she doesn't know. So now the FBI is not trusting one another. Meanwhile, it's the CIA's fault. They know the names. So when Clark Shannon goes, he tells Steve Bongard that that's Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. But what he doesn't tell them is that they're already inside the United States and that they have U.S. visas. He tells them they have Saudi passports. He doesn't tell them the real critical information. So when Steve Bongard asks Clark Shannon, why are you following these guys? Clark Shannon tells him that he can't tell him that. I did a previous video where Carl Levin, the individual you just saw in the video, basically interviews George Tenet. George Tenet tells him Clark Shannon was never told this. However, let's play that video because that turned out not to be true.
Let me read you the staff report. The CIA analyst who attended the New York meeting acknowledged to the Joint Inquiry staff that he had seen the information regarding al-Mihdhar's U.S. visa and al-Hazmi's travel to the United States, but he stated that he would not share information outside of the CIA unless he had authority to do so. That's what he told our staff. Do you disagree with that?
Sir, I've talked to him as well.
Do you disagree that he said that to our staff?
Well, no, I don't disagree. He said it to your staff. I'm telling you what
Did he
told
tell you something differently?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
He gave me a different
So
perspective.
he told
on the
you
meeting.
and he told our staff something differently.
Well,
okay.
but I think it's important, sir.
Yeah, but our time is limited, so let me just...
Okay, all right. George Tenet's lying. He's lying under oath. Why? This is huge. This is the crux, part of the crux of the investigation, pre-9/11 intelligence. The CIA made a decision to intentionally withhold information from the FBI, in essence, the State Department as well, until a White House meeting between Richard Blee, the chief of Alec Station, and George Tenet, where they hold an emergency meeting on August 23rd, 26th, 2001. And finally, it's revealed to the principals at that meeting, including Richard Clark, John O'Neill, the FBI Counter-Terrorism Center, that two al-Qaeda affiliates, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, are inside the United States. However, what they don't share with them, even to that point, that they had U.S. visas and where they were. The CIA and the NSA knew that much, and still, just 2 weeks prior to the event, they don't share this information. Now the FBI is basically trying to find a needle in the haystack. Meanwhile, the CIA and the NSA, and I'm not mentioning the Israelis and Saudis at this point, it's different, they intentionally withhold pertinent information from the principals' meetings at the White House and the FBI. The question is why? We have names. We can point out malfeasance, maybe even foreknowledge here. This is huge. And the 9/11 truth room, because they've been hijacked by these fringe conspiracy theorists who want to talk about implosions at ground zero, or you want to talk about drone airliners or living hijackers or patsies or whatever. You basically throw all of this away because you think that this is part of the official narrative. Meanwhile, it's implicating the CIA and the NSA in a cover-up of information which should have been shared, which could have prevented 9/11 from even happening, or part of it. And according to Thomas Drake, the former senior executive of the NSA had so much metadata at that point that they could have stopped 9/11 altogether just based on the information they had, not even talking about the CIA and what they had. We need to get back to the roots and talk about these issues, because it'll be forgotten in time if we don't bring up these important details which show that there was at least a crime happening here by the CIA and by the NSA in default, because they were the first agency to monitor these people. And we need to know why the CIA and the NSA intentionally withheld information from the FBI, from the State Department, from other federal agencies, which could have been monitoring these people right from the jump,